Well, good morning once again. Hi, it's me, Ken, talking to you from the Ken LaSalle Grand Ballroom and reading to you this morning Chapter 4 of my book, Climbing Maya, an exploration into success. What is success? We're looking to find out in these readings. And now on to Chapter 4. By the way, you can get Climbing Maya in ebook, paperback, and audiobook from Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Audible, Amazon, you name it. It may be out there. Hope you pick yourself up a copy. I had purchased a bottle of Maker's Mark whiskey about a week before being fired. The pressure of the job had been enough to warrant it, and now I had ample enough reason to drink it. So I poured some over ice and took it outside to the patio. The patio's just over there. Our patio is the extent of our home outside our walls. There is no yard to speak of, just the patio, which is similar to several people we know. I sat outside with my whiskey, a notepad, and an ashtray within reach. The night was hot enough still to require air conditioning upstairs, and though our bedroom window was just over the patio, the window was closed, and Vicky would be none the wiser about my smoking. So I lit up. Boys and girls, I don't want to see you smoking out there. I quit. Thank heaven. I looked at the blank notepad in front of me. Poured a little coffee before I started drinking. It's still way too hot. Smoking the cigarette, I remembered my mom's response when she heard that I wanted to major in philosophy in college. What do you have to add that somebody else hasn't already thought of? It was the same kind of comment I'd been given when I decided I wanted to be a writer. And yet, here was something I'd never heard an answer to. What is success? Success can include a lot of things: money, prestige, power, fame. I pictured a kind of Venn diagram, circles meeting at a central point with an empty area in the center where they all came together. Success was in there. But what was it? Well, if I couldn't get the answer from what it can be, maybe I could find the answer by excluding what it cannot be. That seemed fair enough. I wrote, success is not brown. Beneath that, I wrote, success is not a cheesecake. Then I stopped. I don't know what's going on out there, or if you can hear Apocalypse Now going on outside my window. Anyway, I stopped. Success can be brown. It can be brown paint or dirt. It can be land. Someone can find success in the real estate market. Success can also be a cheesecake. Success could make a fortune creating expensive, custom cheesecakes. I tore off the sheet and crumpled it up. That line of reasoning would get me nowhere. The whiskey was harsh going down, but I knew I'd get used to it. Finishing the cigarette, I stuffed it out in the ashtray and looked at the blank street again. On the first line, I wrote, "How can you find inner peace thinking you're a failure?" That took me by surprise. What the hell? Inner peace? Do successful people have inner peace? Does Bill Gates have inner peace? Did John D. Rockefeller, Thomas Edison, did Andrew Carnegie have inner peace? Carnegie worked his entire life but didn't have a child, that I know of, until he was 62 years old. Did all of his money bring him inner peace? Didn't he become a philanthropist? Hi, at 66, out of the guilt all that money brought? Did he have inner peace? Did that have anything to do with success? I wrote, you were supposed to do something with your life, but you didn't. I don't know about you folks out there, but I like to constantly remind myself of my failures and regrets. It builds a nice crusty film that you can hide inside of when you're reading crap like this on the internet and thinking, what the hell am I doing? What the hell was I doing? When did this have to do, or what did this have to do with success? I remembered a history teacher in high school, Mrs. Andrews, tell me at my high school graduation ceremony that one day I would win a Pulitzer Prize. An acting coach once told me how certain he was that I would one day win an Academy Award. And yet here I was on my patio, unemployed at 40. What happened to all those things I was supposed to achieve? Like having coffee. Right, it's really hot. Of course I considered myself a failure. What had I achieved? Was it any wonder I didn't have any inner peace? My first marriage had been a failure, and now less than a year into my second marriage, I was failing Vicky. Most of my peers had children by now. I had wanted children and didn't have any. I'd cashed in my writing talent for corporate work and had failed at that. I'd failed as an actor out of sloth. I knew from a very young age what I wanted to do with my life. When my father asked me at 13, I told him, I want to be an actor like Don Adams. That's right, I said that out loud. Don Adams starred in a comedy called Get Smart back in the 1960s, a show I'd seen over and over, shown repeatedly on local television. Keep in mind I was 13. My dad reminded me that after his role as Maxwell Smart, Don Adams was typecast as that character and he'd done little else. If I'd said Orson Welles, he might have easily used the same response, referring to Welles's role as Charles Foster Kane, But it wasn't just my dad doing this. Split by divorce, my family still retained a singularity of purpose. They spent my formative years working at my self-esteem until I felt that writing and acting were off limits. I was supposed to get a normal job in case I failed at my dreams. What was the point of having dreams? The more I failed, the harder I tried. I continued trying to prove them wrong. In the end, I focused on my failures, confirming what I'd been told. What was I doing? I was supposed to be taking notes on a topic that was, even now, burning inside of me. Instead, I was torturing myself. I knew about my shortcomings. That wasn't the point. I crossed out both lines and took another drink before starting again. If I couldn't figure out success, what could I write? I was growing tired and my glass nearly empty, so I lit another cigarette and tried again. I wrote, what is failure? That was easier. We're surrounded by failure. It's easy to see. Yes, that was something. Failure is easy to identify, both long-term and short-term. We see short-term failure in sporting events, in the guy who doesn't get the close parking spot, in the person who loses the election, or in the movie that bombs. Example after example scrolled through my mind. Long-term failures included the homeless beggar, the poor country, the slums, Chernobyl, which may be on fire even as we speak. But failures fell amidst men and the works of men. We don't see them in nature. Nature or natural disasters aren't classified as failures until they affect us. Ice planets and hot wastelands, Neptune and Mercury, aren't called failures. Failure is a reflection on humanity. I repeat that again. Failure is only a reflection on people. You only refer to people as failures. You don't call your dog a failure, but you call a person a failure. Just want to make sure we had that straight. If it's so easy to acknowledge failure, why do we fail to recognize accomplishments when they happen? Why couldn't Sean see the accomplishment of his marriage and the way he cared for his wife? Love isn't classified as success. Emotions somehow fall out of that classification. But I could see this narrowing the scope of what I was after, and that was a good thing. Then Tim entered my mind again. Tim, who'd long ago stopped trying to accomplish anything, stopped trying to attain his dreams, not only recognized his successes, he held on to them like life preservers. Many times I'd seen him interacting with people, telling them he'd once been a male model, or that he'd been in a movie, or that he'd been a journalist. But there was something ironic there. He'd worked as a model, but had hardly been successful at it. He'd made a little money, but he'd let it slide. I remember him talking about how degrading it made him feel to be used for his body and never encouraged to use his real talents. And the movie he'd been in, I'd also seen the movie, and both of our movies had gone unnoticed. I'd also been in a movie, I'd also been in a movie, and both of our movies had gone unnoticed. There you go. So how was it he could embrace that so tenaciously while I felt almost embarrassed not to have done more? I thought about his writing. Tim had an amazing talent for storytelling, and his writing had always been superb. Yet when it came time for him to make something out of himself with his writing, he'd shied away from it. He even gave up on journalism after the slightest sign of success. It was as though he'd had enough and didn't feel he needed any more. No, that wasn't it. You could see the humiliation with every bottle of cheap vodka he drank. He wasn't recognizing his success. He was hiding his failure behind what little he could. Even with him, failure trumped success. I apologize for the use of the word trump. Many of us are taught at a young age not to toot our own horn. There's this fear of conceit as though success is shameful and failure is expected. Why is that? Is it our upbringing? Was I raised amidst a generation of success neurotics? With the hour growing late and my eyes getting tired, I wrote, "Your life belongs to you. The outcome is your fault." Yes, that seemed to sum it up. Basic existentialism. You give your life meaning. The sad truth is we're only here for so long. It seemed like an a priori concept, something an infant knows. So why are we so ready to minimize our lives? Why can't we put more on the profit side of the tally sheet, of life's tally sheet? I was just as guilty of that as anyone, as was Sean. Tim, however, was loading his sheet with false figures, seemingly to avoid the uncomfortable reality of the numbers he'd end up with. And it all looked better with booze. The phrase inauthentic existence popped into my head. Sure, what better way to put it? But I couldn't help wondering which of us was better off. Was I superior because I was honest with myself? Did that improve my life, bring me that elusive inner peace? Not in the least. Maybe Tim was a step or two ahead of me. Or maybe he wasn't. But that's the end of chapter 4. And I'll see you tomorrow. Take it easy.
And there you have it. You've just survived another Ken LaSalle video. For more information about new releases, projects in the works, or even stuff from the archives, head on down to kenlasalle.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Twitter, and all around social media, just as long as it's called Facebook or Twitter. Thanks for your support, as always. Be sure to subscribe to this channel, and I'll be back soon with more nonsense.